are the most mind-blowing facts about the deep space? Story 1. There's a large cloud of dust and gas near the center of the Milky Way called Sagittarius B2. It contains a significant amount of alcohol non-drinkable forms, but also standard ethanol, and also high levels of a compound called ethyl formate, which is used as a flavoring in raspberry-flavored things. It's also about 150 light-years across, which is pretty big. The center of the galaxy smells like a giant raspberry daiquiri, maybe. Story 2. To scale the Sun is the size of an atom. Alpha Centauri, the closest star, is 1 millimeter away. Our galaxy, Milky Way, is 15 50 feet across. Andromeda Galaxy is 360 meters 3 football fields away. The observable universe is the size of the Earth. It takes light 4 years to travel 1 millimeter, 100 years to travel 1 inch. Story 3. The Milky Way, the galaxy in which our solar system resides, is home to at least 100 billion other planets, and up to 400 billion stars. The Milky Way is just one of 100 to 200 billion galaxies in the observable sky. Story 4. Hold up your hands and clap them together. Wait 1 second, then do it again. If you could plot the distance between the first clap and the second clap, it would be more than 800 kilometers.
This is because the Earth is moving around the Sun. The Sun is moving around the center of the galaxy. The galaxy is moving through the Virgo supercluster, and the Virgo supercluster is barreling through the universe.
When you add up all the velocities and compare the result to the cosmic microwave background, which is the closest thing we have to a universal frame of reference, it comes out to about 800 kilometers per second. Sit still for an hour, and you'll travel farther than you'll ever walk in your life. TLDR Zoom. Story 5. A lot of people already know that if the Sun suddenly disappeared, would get its light for 8 minutes. But fun fact, would also get its gravity for 8 minutes. Story 6. If you snap a piece of metal in half in the vacuum of space, it will weld itself back together seamlessly if you rejoin the pieces. The only thing that stops it from happening on Earth is because we have a pesky oxygen-rich atmosphere that ruins everything cool. Except fire. Fire is cool. Story 7. While NASA catalogs all the asteroids in the asteroid belt, they don't actually take them into account when firing probes and such through it because it's so spaced out that there's a very low chance of them actually hitting the probe. Densely packed asteroid fields where you'd have to dodge and weave through them are pretty much sci-fi. Story 8. A supernova is brighter than you can comprehend. If you were to take a nuclear bomb, hold it up to your eyeball and set it off, this would be incredibly bright for that picosecond before it killed you. But if the Sun were to go supernova, it would be 1,000,000 times brighter than that, even though it's 93 million miles away. Story 9. If we could drive straight up, a drive to outer space would only take about 2 hours. To the Moon is a 6-month drive, and Mars would be 228 years. Story 10. We only need 40 digits of pi to calculate the circumference of the universe accurately. So accurately, in fact, that the margin of error would be less than the width of a hydrogen atom. NASA uses 15 digits for interplanetary calculations. Story 11. My absolute favorite space fact are the wacky orbital parameters of Venus. It takes Venus longer to rotate once around its own axis, i.e. a day, than it does to orbit once around the Sun, i.e. a year. Imagine trying to make a calendar for living on that planet. Story 12. Astronomer here. One thing I don't think we discuss enough lately is that sharks are older than Saturn's rings. Explanation. Recent research from the Cassini spacecraft indicate that Saturn's rings are, in fact, very young. As young as 100 million years old. We can tell this because years of bombardment from essentially tiny soot particles would make the rings much darker than they currently appear. They definitely weren't around 4 or 5 billion years, the age of the solar system. Sharks, on the other hand, have been around 450 million years, ergo, shark Saturn's rings. As for what caused the rings, it was likely an impact of some sort, and people are now arguing over the various details. Here is a simulation of one of my favorites, which involves a comet hitting a large icy moon. Pretty lucky for us though, because TBH Saturn would appear nowhere near as incredible without the rings. Story 13. Jupiter is so massive it doesn't technically orbit the Sun. Its barycenter lies 1.07 solar radii from the middle of the Sun or 7 of a sun radius above the Sun's surface. Both the Sun and Jupiter orbit around that point in space. Story 14. I'll bungle the details, but that a man-made object, Voyager, has left our solar system, has gone billions of kilometers away, and that we are able to receive info from it via radio waves. This truly boggles my mind, that we can receive a message from that far away. I think someone pointed out that it's largely because space is mostly empty. Story 15. The concept of voids has always been mind-bending to me. For those who aren't familiar, our universe is basically formed of galactic groupings called clusters and filaments, depending on whether they are groupings or long strands. Voids are the space in between these groupings, and are essentially massive zones of near total nothingness, with something like 10 times fewer particles than even interstellar space. Shit's wild. Story 16. In theory, if we could place a mirror focused on Earth 0.5 ly away and look at it with a telescope, we could see events 1 year in the past in real time. Story 17. Stole this from an old post here. Space is empty, like really empty. If you flew a spacecraft from one side of the galaxy to the other, what are the chances you run into something? What is something? If you go through the galaxy, you're guaranteed to hit molecular gas, dust, and maybe up to pebble-sized objects or something. But if you mean hitting anything planet-sized or bigger, you have a 0 chance within rounding errors. Put another way, if the entire universe had stars as densely packed as they are in galaxies, you'd still have to travel all the way across the observable universe 6,300 times before you'd expect to run into anything planet-sized or bigger by accident. Story 18. Less than 5 of the universe is made up of regular matter that we interact with and are made of. More than 95 of everything that exists is considered dark energy or dark matter. Basically, things we can't see and don't fully understand. Essentially, the universe is 5 tangible stuff and 95 empty energy fields cosmic force sec. Also, if we took all the regular matter in the universe and compressed it to the density of a neutron star, densest thing we know about in the universe, other than you, our mom, and place that compressed ball where the sun is, then it would only reach to between Mars and Jupiter. Story 19. There's a famous quote from Heinlein: once you're in low Earth orbit you're halfway to anywhere. Now obviously this isn't literally true, but it's closer to the truth than you might realize. Using Hohmann transfer orbits you can get from one orbit to another, say from Earth to Mars, for a very low delta-v expenditure compared to the delta-v required to get into orbit in the first place. The downside of this method is that it's slow and you have to use a specific launch window to get there. For example, to go from Earth to Mars this way, the launch window occurs every 26 months and the journey takes 9 months. Story 20. Spaghettification. Extreme tidal forces caused by supermassive objects will stretch elongate things that get close into very thin, long shapes like spaghetti. Story 21. If you took the solar system and shrink it till the sun was the size of a basketball or my head, have them take 10 steps away and think of a pinhead, that would be Mercury, take another 9, and think of a peppercorn or BB, that's Venus, another 7 steps with a peppercorn and there is Earth. Then tell them Pluto is a grain of salt 23 of a mile away. Did this with a coworker one night at Walmart, and had her walk the distance off while she was going to break. Blew her mind. Story 22. The asteroid belt does not look like Star Wars. You could be on an asteroid in the middle of the belt and chances are slim to none you will see a neighboring asteroid with the naked eye. Story 23. Water facts. In space, Ganymede, Europa, and Callisto are thought to have subsurface oceans larger than all the bodies of water on Earth put together. Not all together individually. This is because water tends to aggregate in the outer part of solar systems while they're forming. Celestial bodies out there might have formed with as much as 50 water ice by mass. Water is soluble in magma, so most water would be trapped in the mantle. As the mantle cooled, water is exsolved. But unlike Earth, which is close enough to the sun to maintain liquid water on the surface, these moons are past the frost line. Water on their surface froze, but tidal flexing and the heat from their cores caused massive subsurface oceans to form. One possible exoplanet type is the ocean planet, sometimes referred to as a panthalassic planet. Such planets would actually have a harder time developing life than Earth. Oceans on Earth extend down around 11 kilometers at the deepest point. On a panthalassic planet they could extend down hundreds of kilometers. At such depths, even at high temperatures the pressure would still cause massive layers of ice to form. Ice that might not even be cold. This would make the travel of important nutrients, like phosphorus, to the water nearly impossible. On Earth, these nutrients mostly come from runoff from the land, which would be impossible on an ocean planet. Such planets would have atmospheres thick with water vapor, which would cause a strong greenhouse effect. If they were large enough to trap hydrogen and helium, they would in effect become warmer ice giants, like Neptune or Uranus. Story 24. In a couple years, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be launching the James Webb Space Telescope. The successor to the Hubble is going to be 5 million kilometers away from Earth, somewhere called L2, which is beyond the moon itself. It will be able to see far enough to technically see the universe early after the Big Bang. Oh, and we recently landed a tiny module onto an asteroid only 1 kilometer wide, and it's planned to return back to Earth with rock samples sometime next year. Apparently we've already done this around 2005. FGAN nuts. Story 25. If you entered a black hole, then you'd be able to see the back of your own head. Also, scientists think that a couple seconds in a black hole could equal years on Earth. Story 26. How huge it is. Just that, it's huge. Just the space between here and the moon is huge. You see that circle in the night sky? A circle so small it'll fit in a hole punch. That circle is thousands of miles across. It has to be far to look that small, and don't get me started on the sun. Story 27. The vacuum of space is -270 C, while absolute zero is -273 C. The 3-degree difference is due to residual background radiation, because thermal energy only transfers one of 3 ways. Your body would not freeze in deep space very quickly because the vacuum acts almost as an insulator. You would die from suffocation or go unconscious from the pressure difference before you froze. Story 28. This image is the result of a 10-day exposure by the Hubble telescope pointed at the darkest point of the night sky, the size of Teddy Roosevelt's eye on a dime held at arm's length away from your eye. Every blip of light is another galaxy with hundreds of billions of stars and planets. Story 29. We don't actually know that the Big Bang was the start of everything. We just don't have evidence of anything that happened before it. There could have been a whole populated universe and the Big Bang just hit the reset button. There's a theory that our own universe could end in another Big Bang type event too. Right now the universe is expanding, but one thing that might happen is that it switches to deflating. Gravity's force the universe to collapse in a big crunch and we start over with another bang. Or our universe could just keep expanding indefinitely. The thing about this is that the edges of the universe aren't just spreading outward. The space between galaxies is actually expanding like drawing on a balloon then inflating it. so we might just keep expanding until there aren't any galaxies close enough to detect. All evidence of the Big Bang would be lost and we would be essentially alone in the universe. Oh, another one is that organic molecules, carbohydrates, lipids, proteins exist in space. They're just out there chilling. Sorry if this is a lot, I just had an EAS test. Story 30. We succeeded in taking that picture from deep space. And if you look at it, you see a dot. That's here, that's home, that's us on it. Everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever lived out their lives. The aggregate of all our joys and sufferings, thousands of confident religions, ideologies and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilizations, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every hopeful child, every mother and father, every inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species, lived there on a mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and in triumph they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of it. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of the dot on scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner of the dot. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe, are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. It is up to us. It's been said that astronomy is a humbling, and I might add, a character-building experience. To my mind, there is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly and compassionately with one another, and to preserve and cherish that pale blue, the only home we've ever known. Carl Sagan, speech at Cornell University, October 13, 1994. Story 31. Just remember that you're standing on a planet that's evolving and revolving at 900 miles an hour, it's orbiting at 19 miles a second, so it's reckoned, the sun that is the source of all our power. Now the sun and you and me and all the stars that we can see, are moving at 1,000,000 miles a day, in the outer spiral arm, at 40,000 miles an hour, of a galaxy we call the Milky Way. Our galaxy itself contains 100 billion stars. It's 100,000 light-years side to side. It bulges in the middle 16,000 light-years thick, but out by us it's just 3,000 light-years wide. We're 30,000 light-years from galactic central point. We go round every 200 million years, and our galaxy itself is one of millions of billions in this amazing and expanding universe. Our universe itself keeps on expanding and expanding. In all of the directions it can whiz as fast as it can go, at the speed of light, 12 million miles a minute, and that's the fastest speed there is. So remember, when you're feeling very small and insecure, how amazingly unlikely is your birth, and pray that there's intelligent life somewhere out in space, because there's all down here on Earth. Story 32. That deep space is so far away that if we humanity ever tried to go there, by the time we got there, would have already been there, colonized it, and possibly gone extinct there. Imagine you're a pioneer. You're the first person ever who is about to move from the East Coast to the West Coast. You set out on a journey that's going to take 10 years by horse and carriage, moving very slowly with a family. 1 year into the trip, cars are invented, and so another family sets out and makes it to California in 1 week. By the time you show up, Family B has already been living in California for nearly 9 years. Take that scenario, and apply it to space. I'm blanking on the name of the theory, but essentially it says that if we tried to travel anywhere of great distance, technology advances too fast for a faster means of transportation to not be invented before we get there, so someone would always arrive before us. Story 33. Image the explosion of VY Canis Majoris. If placed at the center of the solar system, VY-CMA surface would extend beyond the orbit of Jupiter, although there is still considerable variation in estimates of the radius, with some making it larger than the orbit of Saturn. Story 34. If you were to start counting the stars from the moment you were born at a rate of 1 per second, 24 hours per day, every day of your life until you were 100 years old, you would only count around 1% of the stars in our Milky Way galaxy. Think about that when you think about exploring the stars in rocket ships. You couldn't even begin to scratch the surface of exploring our galaxy, let alone the universe. Story 35. Stars don't actually twinkle. What's happening is that your eyes make rapid involuntary movements called saccades. Your brain automatically corrects and eliminates your visual processing of that movement, so you never see it. However, the stars are so far away that your brain can't deal with them. And there's no evolutionary reason to waste neural resources on that. It's not like you're ever going to have to shoot an arrow at the Big Dipper, so when you see the stars twinkle, you're actually looking at the saccades of your own eyes. Story 36. Things are constantly going out of view in regards to the observable universe. We can only see so far in space, but since the universe is expanding, there are parts of it that we can see now, but as they're getting further away, they'll eventually get to where we can't see them. So the number of things in space we can look out and see is constantly getting smaller. Story 37. Behold, the axis of evil. Basically, while measuring background radiation from the Big Bang, scientists noticed a strange anomaly. the readings should have been the same in every direction, but they weren't. Strangely, the readings aligned perfectly with the axis of the Earth. In other words, their readings indicated that Earth was at the very center of the universe. This unexpected data has caused much controversy among scientists, and as far as I know, it has never been fully explained. Edit can't get the link to work properly. Hey race the Wikipedia link. Story 38 On average, space has a mass density of 1 particle cubic meter. One particle, and the best part, traveling a significant portion of the speed of light would smash these particles together and generate a lot of radiation, with only a mass density of 1 particle per cubic meter. Story 39 Every point of the universe is the center of the universe. Edit best explanation I could find. Story 40 There is a planet similar in size to Earth that is made entirely out of diamond. Also neutron stars are pretty cool. The fastest ones rotate 4,000 x a second, and while only 20 kilometers in diameter, they are at least 4x heavier than the Sun. If the surface of one cracks, it can cause a stellar quake, explosions so powerful that they can destroy stars if within a 15,000 light-year radius, and 150,000 light-years away temporarily blinded all satellites orbiting Earth, much closer and we could have faced global extinction. Story 41 There's a cloud in space that smells like rum and tastes like raspberries. There's also a planet where it rains sideways glass. Edit it rains glass sideways, not sideways glass. Story 42 You could touch the coldest known star in existence. It's only about 90-100 C. Granted it would still be hot to touch and probably give you a nasty burn, but it's not much hotter than a cup of coffee. Story 43 The fact that space is expanding uniformly means that the further you are positioned from something, the more space is expanding between you and it. If you're far enough apart, you will effectively be receding away from that object faster than the speed of light without violating relativity. This means that there is a finite though very large distance from Earth, the Hubble distance 14 billion Ly, from which no light can ever reach us. Eventually galaxies will reach that distance from each other. We're actually super lucky to be alive right now on a cosmic scale that we can actually observe other galaxies. Story 44 If you were to go through a wormhole and have a telescope with the technology to look back at Earth through the wormhole, we could possibly see dinosaurs, because the time it would take for light to reach the telescope before the wormhole would not reach the telescope yet after going through the wormhole, therefore allowing us to see millions of years in the past. Story 45 If the universe is infinite, then there must be a place where every time a fair die has been rolled, it came up sixes, and every time a coin was tossed, it came up heads. In an infinite universe, not only is everything possible, it is necessary. Story 46 The distance to your nearest duplicate is probably about 101,028 meters. This is an immense distance, far beyond the observable universe. But there are a finite number of ways you can arrange matter in any given volume, so if space is flat and goes on forever, as it appears to, then there are an infinite number of duplicate Earths out there, as well as an infinite number that are slightly different. Story 47 The Andromeda Galaxy and our own Milky Way are hurtling towards each other, and the two will one day in the distant future collide. The cool part though there is no probability of anything stars, planets, asteroids, alien spacecraft, etc. actually colliding as a result. If you did the math, the percent chance actually comes out to something like 0.0001 chance of something colliding. Our ancestors will just have front row seats to the biggest light show of all time, that is if they leave Earth before the sun eats it up. Story 48 Look up at the sky in the darkest and most cloudless of nights and you see all those stars. All the individual stars that you can see with your naked eyes are all part of our Milky Way galaxy. You literally cannot see other galaxies' individual stars without powerful telescopes, and there are countless other galaxies. Story 49 Let me tell you a few things about neutron stars. First, they are small, many only about 20 miles in diameter. Unimpressive, right? Wrong. They are formed from the supernova of a massive star collapsing on itself, shrinking to become so incredibly dense that any matter fuses at the molecular level. A chunk the size of a sugar cube weighs as much as Mount Everest. Think the sun is hot? Then be glad we're not near a neutron star, with a temperature of 600,000 K, or over 1 million degrees Fahrenheit. It's 100 times hotter than our sun at a fraction of the size. With the immense density, the gravitational pull is extraordinary as well. Often the gravity is hundreds of billions times stronger than Earth. And finally, ever feel like Earth spins slowly and days can drag on? Not a problem for neutron stars. They can spin hundreds of times per second, to the point that the whole star is warped into an oblong shape due to the speed. So there are a few facts to blow your mind. Enjoy. Story 50 There are 10 million particles in the universe that we can observe. Your mama took the ugly ones and put them into one nerd. Story 51 Space, it says, is big, really big. You just won't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is. I mean, you may think it's a long way down the road to the chemists, but that's just peanuts to space. Story 52 Space is big, really big. You just won't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is. I mean, you may think it's a long way down the road to the chemists, but that's just peanuts to space. Story 53 You can literally look back in time every night. Light travels fast, 587 trillion miles a year. Space is big, like totally. The light you're seeing from the stars above you at night is old. Most of the stars we see with the naked eye at night are within a few hundred light years. although a handful are as far away as 2,000 light-years. So most of the light from stars you are seeing at night is a few hundred years old. You're seeing those stars as they were before the American Revolution, some before the birth of Christ. Wow. Story 54. Space is neither hot nor cold, contrary to Hollywood movies, because it's a perfect vacuum. There is no heat loss due to conduction or convection, only by radiation, which is very slow. Astronauts have a far more difficult time staying cool than warm, due to direct sunlight causing heating with very little accompanying heat loss. Story 55. The largest known interstellar void, an area of space where there is literally nothing, maybe a single atom every few meters, at most is 10 Milky Ways in diameter. Story 56. We will never leave our local group, and there could be life in their local group that will never reach us. It's like the universe's way of stopping galactic war. Story 57. A neutron star, which is produced when a star that is only slightly too small to create a black hole collapses, is in some cases so dense that its surface is made of matter that has been compressed into a kind of crystal. This forms a crust of sorts, similar to the surface of the Earth, and like the Earth this can shift and crack, which results in a starquake. The resulting shock wave is so powerful that an event of this kind in 2004, from 50,000 light-years away, projected enough energy to ionize part of the Earth's atmosphere. The energy wave that hit the Earth was more powerful than a solar flare from our own sun. These events are so rare that the current math predicts only around a dozen of them being present in our entire galaxy, and we were lucky enough to have a satellite in orbit at the time which was designed specifically to detect interstellar X-rays, the same type produced by this star. What a time to be alive. Story 58. If someone was on a planet orbiting Alpha Centauri and looking at us here on Earth through a telescope, they would see an Earth where Obama was still president of the US. Story 59. The Sombrero Galaxy is one of the loudest galaxy, as it emits massive amounts of radio waves. We still don't know why exactly, but it sounds like th. Story 60. How absurdly huge it is. You've seen the Milky Way, right? You've seen the 250,000,000,000 stars that make up our own galaxy, many of which have worlds like our own. Well, take a look at this image, the top one on that page. That's the Hubble Deep Field. It's the tiny section of sky, outlined right there next to the moon between two stars in our galaxy. To the naked eye, it's just black sky, but the Hubble was able to see all of this. Your initial reaction must be, wow, there are a lot more stars than I thought out there, except those aren't stars. Every speck of dust in that image, every pinprick of light in that tiny little square next to the moon, is an entire galaxy. Think about this next time you see the Milky Way. See all of those hundreds of billions of stars, each with entire worlds orbiting them, so numerous you can't tell them apart. In between each of those, in every sliver of blackness, is 1,000 more instances of 100 billion more. The universe is very, very big. Story 61. Those playing KSP will know this, but in order to get to the moon, or to any other planet, you don't just travel in the general direction of it to reach it. One of the most fuel-efficient and popular methods to do that is to reach low Earth orbit, and burn roughly parallel to the Earth's surface until your orbit extends outwards to the moon, for example, and you reach the sphere of influence of the moon and escape Earth's direct influence. Story 62. A little late to the party, but a few days ago, astronomers saw an Earth-sized piece of matter hurling towards a supermassive black hole at 30 of the speed of light. That's about 100 million meters per second. Story 63. Boats void. Astronomers have discovered a curious empty section of space which is missing around 10,000 galaxies. The supervoid, which is 1.8 billion light-years across, is the largest known structure ever discovered in the universe, but scientists are baffled about what it is and why it is so barren. It sits in a region of space which is much colder than other parts of the universe, and although it is not a vacuum, it seems to have around 20% less matter than other regions. Although the Big Bang Theory allows for areas that are cooler and hotter, the size of the void does not fit with predicted models. Simply put, it is too big to exist. Istvan Saputi, of University of Hawaii at Manoa, described the object as possibly the largest individual structure ever identified by humanity, copied from here. Story 64. The Boats void, sometimes called the Great Void, is a huge spherical region of space that contains very few galaxies. It's approximately 700 million light-years from Earth and located near the constellation Boats, which is how it got its name. If the solar system was in the middle of it, we would have discovered the universe till mid-20th century. Technology could detect other stuff out there. Story 65. Even with air, fire cannot burn without gravity. In gravity, the warm air and carbon dioxide flows upwards because it's at a lower pressure, allowing more oxygen to come in and continue the reaction. Without gravity, if you light something on fire, i.e. in air on the ISS, it will form a small round flame around the object, and then quickly go out because it will use up all of the oxygen in the surrounding air. Story 66. What potentially makes up for 85% of the matter of the entire universe is a thing called dark matter. No one has actually ever seen it. It's composed of undiscovered subatomic particles, and if that doesn't make you feel small, I don't know what does. Story 67. The actual space. How much of it there really is, going a significant percentage of C is, well, impressive. Story 68. This is more of a cool Earth fact, but there are more trees on Earth than there are stars in the Milky Way. There are more transistors on Earth than there are leaves on trees on Earth. Story 69. That if the sun were replaced by a black hole of equal size and mass, the Earth would not get sucked into it. Obviously the Earth would freeze, but the entire solar system would remain unchanged. Works the same way as Sagittarius A at the center of the Milky Way. Story 70. Anyone have any science channels and like Science Insider and etc. that they watch on YouTube? I found it very interesting. My chem teacher pointed out I could isolate different chemicals and understood physics and its formulas but barely passed biology. It was hilarious discussion in class. Story 71. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. This isn't something I'm making up though, and it's cool mostly because it's not intuitive. Okay, so, imagine a tree, you know exactly how big that is, you can hold the image of it in your head, you don't have to mentally resize it. Now imagine some animal you've never seen before. I don't know what your life experience is, so just make something up. Again, even though you've never seen it before, you can imagine it without doing any mental resizing. You might have to compare it to something you've seen before, but you don't have to resize it. You can't do that with celestial bodies. It just isn't possible. You can mentally resize it by doing exercises like imagining the sun is the size of a beach ball, but you cannot actually imagine it as it is. There's also a hard limit in the other direction. You cannot visualize a molecule as it is, no matter how hard you work at it. Story 72. The theorized size of the universe is so incredibly massive. If we took a light bulb and had the volume of that light bulb represent the observable universe, it's theorized that the rest of the universe would be as large as Pluto compared to the light bulb. Story 73. Space isn't straight up. Like you can get into space if you head straight up, but you won't stay there. The vast majority of energy used to get to space is expended going sideways fast enough to stay up. The International Space Station is only 400 kilometers up or so, but it travels many times faster than a bullet. Astronauts on the ISS orbit the Earth in 90 minutes, so they see a sunrise every 90 minutes. Story 74. This video always blows my mind. It was apparently made from actual data, rather than a kind of artistic impression, so all the stars are in the right place etc. Story 75. There's technically a non-zero chance you could get hit by a car in space. Someone somewhere, thousands of years in the future is going to get up by that car Elon Musk put in space. Story 76. During the nuclear tests, America tried setting bombs off underground to see the effect it would have on the floors of building and such. Using a slow-motion camera they filmed a manhole cover which on one frame could be seen, but the next it couldn't. After calculations it was proven that the manhole 3 cover traveled so fast that it would have left orbit and is not flying through space. Story 77. When you are looking at a star 500 light-years away, you are currently looking at the star 500 years back in the past. It might not be there anymore. RN. Story 78. There exists a cosmological event horizon beyond which no new information sent today will ever reach us, even after an infinite amount of time has passed. This is very similar to the event horizon of a black hole. Story 79. There are events called gamma-ray bursts that could utterly decimate life on Earth if they are within 25,000 light-years. We have no way to see it coming, and nothing we could do to prepare. Story 80. It took the Apollo astronauts roughly 3 days to reach the moon. It is so far away that you can fit all the other planets in the solar system, even Pluto, between the Earth and the moon. Story 81. No matter where you are in the universe, even if you were somehow able to get to the edge, it will appear as if you are at the center of the universe to you. Story 82. Stupid question because my mind can't wrap itself around it. Space, the universe, whatever, it just doesn't end. I mean, I get there is no wall anywhere, but how is it possible? That really is just too much to comprehend that you could drive straight rocket for trillions of years and still just be nowhere really. Story 83. Eta Carinae is one of the freakiest star systems in our galaxy. In 1843 it erupted to briefly become the second brightest star in the sky, despite being 7,500 light-years distant. As it is shrouded in dust and the remnant of recent explosions, the homunculus nebula, scientists don't know the exact mass of what is thought to be 2 stars buried within. One star is believed to be between 100 and 200 times the mass of the Sun, making it one of the most massive in the galaxy. It is so bright it is the only star system known to produce ultraviolet laser emissions. When it explodes in the near cosmic future, maybe tomorrow or in a few thousand years, it could become a superluminous supernova, a hypernova. Viewed from the Earth, this hypernova would rival the Moon for luminosity.